Hello students, welcome back to the English class. Today we are going to resume with the English class after the Dussehra holiday. So in this class I am going to continue with the same chapter, that is the 5th chapter of your book Snapshots, that is Mother's Day, which is written by J.B. Priestley. And before beginning or before proceeding with this chapter on page number 42, I am going to recollect what we read in the last class or up till now in the play. So as we know that this play deals with the mother, as the title says, Mother's Day. So why this title has been assigned to this chapter? Because the writer celebrates the day when the mother gets back her respect and position in the family. So that's why it's Mother's Day, because this chapter deals with a mother, a docile mother who hardly speaks anything or who hardly complain about anything, and the whole day she is working for her family to fulfill their wishes and never ask for anything in return or complaints. It's the simple thing she wants, like her family to spend time with them. And the lesson talks about how precious mothers and housewives are and how they deserve a lot more than that is given. So we can say that this drama is a mode of fictional representation through dialogue and performance, since it consists of both visual and hearing elements. It is known to have a substantial effect on the minds of people, and the effect is known to be better than something that is read or just simply heard. Thus, if a social message that holds a lot of importance is brought to life through drama, and it holds immense potential for change. So in this chapter we read that Mrs. Pearson is a pleasant but a worried looking woman in her 40s and hates any kind of unpleasantness, and she is excessively concerned about her family. She is too submissive by nature to react to the odd habits of her family members. While on the other hand, another character, Mrs. Fitzgerald, is just opposite to Mrs. Pearson. She is older than Mrs. Pearson and is heavily built with a strong and sinister personality, and she has a deep voice with an Irish touch. And in this chapter, in the beginning, we saw that Mrs. Fitzgerald, she asserts Mrs. Pearson, or she wants Mrs. Pearson to ask for her authority in her family, or to assert her authority in her family, and she advises that she should get a fair and kind treatment by the members of her family, which she is not getting. And she also said that the husbands, sons and daughters should be caring of wives and mothers and not give them orders. Then Mrs. Pearson, on hearing this, expresses her helplessness to act in an autocratic manner or to just command respect in the family by the stern attitude, and she then agrees to the advice of Mrs. Fitzgerald, but confesses that about her, that she would not be able to do that because of her mild nature. Then Mrs. Fitzgerald decides to do it for her, and she decide to change their personalities with each other. And Mrs. Fitzgerald says a few magical words and their personalities are changed. Mrs. Fitzgerald's personality enters Mrs. Pearson's body and vice versa. Then Mrs. Pearson, with Mrs. Fitzgerald's personality, decides to deal with the Pearsons in a stern manner. Then on the other hand, Mrs. Fitzgerald, with Mrs. Pearson's personality, is quite scared at the change and expresses her apprehension, and she fears that and she fears what will happen to all the members when they meet the changed behavior of their mother. And her fears are removed by Mrs. Pearson, who assures her that she can easily bring the exchanged personalities back to their original selves, as Mrs. Pearson is worried that what would happen if Mrs. Fitzgerald is unable to reverse the magic or reverse the souls. Then Mrs. Pearson, what happens, we just saw that what happens when Mrs. Pearson starts behaving in a stern manner with Doris first and then Cyril. Towards Doris, her behavior is cold and incisive now, and as Doris enters, she starts smoking and shows no concern for Doris, who comes in. Then, seeing this, Doris is quite startled and expresses her anger at the indifferent behavior of her mother, and Mrs. Pearson refuses to iron the yellow silk of Doris and advises her to find someone better than Charlie Spence, with whom she has been moving out. And she also calls Charlie as buck-teeth and half-witted, which is not liked by Doris at all, and she starts crying. Then Cyril, who comes in thereafter, also receives the same harsh treatment from Mrs. Pearson. His work of mending has not been done by Mrs. Pearson, as according to her she has no interest in doing that work, and she tells him that she too, like Cyril, would not do anything, for she had no liking. And on this, Cyril is shocked, and he is also shocked at the sudden change in his mother's attitude or behavior. Then Doris and Cyril analyze their mother's changed behavior. They both of them discuss about the sudden change in their mother and her carefree behavior. Then Doris talks about her smoking and game of cards, and is of the opinion that she might have hit her head with something due to which she is not in her senses. And both Cyril and Doris are taken aback and imagine the affairs at their dad's arrival. Then Mrs. Pearson continues with her domineering behavior. Both Cyril and Doris, they are found giggling when Mrs. Pearson enters. Then Mrs. Pearson, who is actually Mrs. Fitzgerald, reprimands both of them for laughing without any reason and belittles them. And then she refuses to prepare tea for Cyril, and she becomes assertive and declares that she would not do any extra work and would confine herself to 8 hours of work for 5 days in a week. She also reveals her plan of going out for the weekend, which is something very unusual. Then she snubs Doris for asking her silly questions, which leads to her crying. Now, let's see further what further. Now, Doris enters and, moving to the settee, anxiously says, "Mummy, you don't mean you are not going to do anything on Saturday and Sunday?" Then Mrs. Pearson, airily answering, "No, I wouldn't go that far. I might make a bed or two and do a bit of cooking as a favor, which means, of course, I'll have to be asked very nicely and thanked for everything and generally made a fuss of. But any of you 40-hour-a-weekers who expect to be waited on hand and foot on Saturday and Sunday with no thanks for it are in for a nasty disappointment. Might go off for the weekend, perhaps." So in these lines, Doris, who is still amazed at what Mrs. Pearson said before, confirms if she was joking about it or not, whether she is not going to work on Saturdays or Sundays. So then Mrs. Pearson, she complains that she might do a few petty tasks if she is pleasantly asked to do, and is duly thanked for performing them as well. Then she warns her that if any of her family members who work for only 8 hours a day and keep blabbering about it expect her to perform all their tasks, then they are going to be let down this time. And she even mentions that she could go for a vacation as well on the weekends. So now further, let's see what happens. Doris is aghast, he's shocked, and then he says, "Go off for the weekend." So now what happened? More shocked. She couldn't believe, Doris could not believe when Mrs. Pearson said that she might go on a vacation this weekend. Then Mrs. Pearson says, "Why not? I could go with a change. I could do with a change. Stuck here day after day, week after week. If I don't need a change, who does?" So in these lines, now Mrs. Pearson replies that she, out of all, deserves to take a break, as she works day and night continuously and she does not get even a day break or a break for even a single day, and while on the other hand they just get 2 days off in a week. Then further Doris says, "But where would you go? Who would you go with?" So Doris is confused now as to where her mother would go and with whom would she go. Then Mrs. Pearson says, "That's my business. You don't ask me where you should go and where and who you should go with." Then Doris, aghast on hearing her mother's words, says, "Go off for the weekend." Here in this line, the word aghast means filled with horror or shock. So now more shocked, she couldn't believe when Mrs. Pearson said that she might go on a vacation this weekend. Then Mrs. Pearson says, "Why not? I could do with a change. Stuck here day after day, week after week, and if I don't need a change, who does?" So Mrs. Pearson, in a very stern manner, replies that she, out of all, deserves to take a break as she works day and night continuously, while they get 2 days off in a week. Then Doris on this replies, "But where would you go? Who would you go with?" Now Doris is confused as to where she would go and with whom. Then Mrs. Pearson says, "That's my business. You don't ask me where you should go and who you should go with." So Mrs. Pearson expresses that Doris has no business asking her all this because she never asked Doris the same stuff. Then on this Doris says, "That's different." Doris tells her that what she does is not the same. So now on this Mrs. Pearson says, "The only difference is that I am a lot older and better able to look after myself. So it's you who should do the asking." Mrs. Pearson clarifies that she is older than Doris and is in a better position to take care of herself. So it would make sense if Doris would take permission from Mrs. Pearson and not the other way round. So on this Doris says, "Did you fall or hit yourself with something?" So now Doris finally asks Mrs. Pearson if she hit herself and got a concussion or something because of which she is behaving so awkwardly. Then Mrs. Pearson very coldly says, "No, but I'll hit you with something, girl, if you don't stop asking silly questions." So now bluntly, Mrs. Pearson, who is actually Mrs. Fitzgerald, replies that she is completely fine. But if Doris doesn't stop talking, then she might hit her with something for sure. Then Doris stares at her open mouth and is ready to cry. Then Doris says, "Oh, this is awful," and she begins to cry, not passionately. So almost about to cry, Doris now expresses how disheartening it is to go through all this, and while she says it, she bursts into tears. Then Mrs. Pearson very coldly says, "Stop blubbering. You're not a baby. If you are old enough to go out with Charlie Spence, you're old enough to behave properly. Now stop it." So here Doris is very much insulted. She feels insulted when her mother says like that. She starts crying, and then Mrs. Pearson asks Doris to stop acting like a child, and she bluntly says that if she considers herself mature enough to go out with Charlie Spence, then she should act properly at home as well. So now George Pearson enters left. So now there's entry of her husband George Pearson, and he is about 50, fundamentally decent but solemn, self-important, pompous. Preferably he should be a heavy, slow-moving type, and he notices Doris's tears. And George says, "Hello, what's this? Can't be anything to cry about." So, in these lines, the word solemn means formal and dignified or characterized by deep sincerity. Pompous means affected, grand, solemn, or self important. So, in these lines now, it is said that as they are talking, George Pearson, Mrs. Pearson's husband, enters, and he is a man in his 50s who is characterized by deep sincerity but is self assertive. As one can infer or make out, he must be a healthy man who moves at a slow pace. He is bulky, so he is not able to move quickly. He is moving very slowly. As he enters, he notices that Doris is crying, and he asks her what's the matter, and is sure the matter won't be worthy of crying. Then Doris, through sobs, she is sobbing and says, "You'll see." Then Doris runs out left with a sob or two on the way, and George stares after her a moment, then looks at Mrs. Pearson. So now Doris tells her father to wait and observe while she is crying and runs out of the scene. Then George says, "Did she say you'll see?" Then George Pearson is left amazed at how she ran and what she said. He is not able to understand what does she mean by it. Then Mrs. Pearson says, "Yes." Mrs. Pearson replies to George's rhetorical question. See, she says yes, and George on this, what did she mean? Now he is still confused about what is going on, as he has entered right now and he does not know anything about Mrs. Pearson. Then Mrs. Pearson advises him to ask Doris what she meant. Then George looks slowly again at the door, then at Mrs. Pearson. Then he notices the stout that Mrs. Pearson raises for another sip, and his eyes are almost bulged. So George says, "Stout." So as Mrs. Pearson raised her glass to sip her stout, George gets even more shocked, as he had never seen his wife taking a stout. So now Mrs. Pearson says yes, and Mrs. Pearson lets him know that he saw right, she was having a stout. Then George is amazed. "What are you drinking stout for?" So he's still amazed. He asks the reason behind her drinking stout. Then Mrs. Pearson says, "Because I fancied some." So still maintaining her calm, she simply replies by saying that she is drinking it because she wanted to. George, at this time of day? Now he is shocked at the sight of Mrs. Pearson drinking and that too during the day. Mrs. Pearson says, "Yes, what's wrong with it at this time of the day?" Then she counter questions and asks what is the problem with drinking at this time of the day. Then George is bewildered and says, "Nothing, I suppose, Annie, but I have never seen you do it before." Now bewildered here means he is also confused and perplexed and very puzzled. He explains that he is so shocked because Mrs. Pearson had never been seen day drinking. So now Mrs. Pearson on this answers, "Well, you are seeing me now." She tells him that there is nothing to be shocked about. If he hadn't seen her do it till date, he is seeing her do it now. Then George, with heavy distaste, says, "Yes, and I don't like it. It doesn't look right. I'm surprised at you." So in contempt, now Mr. Pearson tells Mrs. Pearson that he did not like the idea of her drinking at this hour, and it blew his mind at once. Then Mrs. Pearson says, "Well, that ought to be a nice change for you." So responding to his reaction, she says that it could be a nice change for him. Then George says, "What do you mean?" So now he did not understand what she was trying to say. Then Mrs. Pearson says, "It must be some time since you were surprised at me, George." So she explains that it's been a long time since she amazed him. Then George says, "I don't like surprises. I'm all for a steady going on. You ought to know that by this time, by the way, I forgot to tell you this morning I wouldn't want any tea. Special snooker match night at the club tonight, and a bit of supper going, so no tea." So here in these lines, the word snooker you all know is a game played with cues on a billiard table in which the players use a cue ball or white to pocket the other balls. 15 red and 6 colored balls are there, which are set in order. So now in these lines, George tells her how he doesn't appreciate change or surprises, and this is something Mrs. Pearson should know by now. He then changes the topic by telling Mrs. Pearson that he forgot to tell her about the special snooker match and the supper in the club. Also, he won't be needing any tea that afternoon. So on this, Mrs. Pearson says, "That's all right. There isn't any." So she tells him very frankly that there isn't any tea made. So it's fine even if he forgot to convey. Then on this, George says, he's astonished, he's very much surprised, says, "You mean you didn't get any ready?" So now, shocked at her reply, he asks Mrs. Pearson what she just told him, and he is unable to believe his ears. Then Mrs. Pearson says, "Yes, and a good thing too, as it's turned out." Mrs. Pearson replies and says that it has turned out to be well because he didn't need any tea. Then George is aggrieved. "That's all very well, but suppose I'd wanted some?" So here in these lines, the word aggrieved means distressed. So now Mr. Pearson replies that and says that it has turned out to be well because he didn't need any tea. So on this, George says he asked Mrs. Pearson that if he wanted some then. So on this, Mrs. Pearson answers, "My goodness, listen to the man, annoyed because I don't get a tea for him and he doesn't even want. Ever tried that at the club?" So now Mrs. Pearson expresses her bafflement at the fact that George Pearson is angry that the tea he didn't want is not made, and she suggests that he should try this behavior at the club sometime. That means that she means to say that he is very much confused, or he is very much angry at the fact that the tea is not ready, though the thing was that he did not want to have tea, but still he did not like that idea. He did not like that Mrs. Pearson had not prepared tea, had not got the tea ready for him. So on this, now George says, "Tried what at the club?" So he is not sure as to what Mrs. Pearson is telling him to try at the club. So on this, Mrs. Pearson says, "Going up to the bar and telling them you don't want a glass of beer, but you are annoyed because they haven't already poured it out. Try that on them and see what you get." So now she complains the tea situation in context of the club, where he goes to the bar to tell them that he does not want a beer, and then he gets mad at them because they hadn't already poured some for him. So she suggests that he try and see their reaction in the club. So now on this, George says, "I don't know what you're talking about." So he pretends to not have understood what Mrs. Pearson just said. Then Mrs. Pearson says, "They would laugh at you even more than they do now." So on this, Mrs. Pearson says that the people at the club would make fun of him even more than they did if he does like that in the club, if he behaves in the same manner as he was behaving at home in the club. Then on this, now George replies indignantly, "Laugh at me? They don't laugh at me." So the word indignantly means in a manner indicating anger or annoyance at something perceived as unfair. So now George, he gets irritated with Mrs. Pearson, says that, and tells her that they don't make fun of him. Then Mrs. Pearson says, "Of course you do. You ought to have found that out by this time. Anybody else would have done. You are one of their standing jokes, famous, and they call you Pompey Ompy Pearson because they think you are so slow and pompous." So here in these lines, the word pompous means self-important or overbearing. So now Mrs. Pearson tells him that he should have known this by now. If there would have been someone else in his place, they would have known by now. So, and she also tells him that he is famously made fun about at the club, and they call him Pompey Ompy Pearson because they think he is self-absorbed and overbearing. So now on this, George is horrified and says never. So George is horrified at her words and denies it. He do not agree that the people at the club make fun of him and calls him Pompey Ompy Pearson because they feel that he is very slow and he is self-absorbed and overbearing. Then Mrs. Pearson says, "It's always beaten me why you should want to spend so much time at a place where they are always laughing at you behind your back and calling you names. Leaving your wife at home night after night instead of going out with her, who doesn't make you look a fool?" So now Mrs. Pearson expresses how hurtful it has been for her seeing her husband leaving her and wanting to go to a place where people make fun of him behind his back. And then she further adds that he does it every night instead of going out with Mrs. Pearson, who doesn't at least make him look like a fool. So on this now, Cyril now enters right with a glass of milk in one hand and a thick slice of cake in the other. George, almost dazed, turns to him appealingly. So now Cyril enters the room holding a glass of milk in one hand and a slice of cake in the other, as he was feeling hungry and he wanted his mother to prepare tea for him and provide him with some snack as he was feeling very hungry. So George is now confused seeing Cyril and turns to look at him seeking his help. Then George says, "Here Cyril, you've been with me to the club once or twice. They don't laugh at me and call me Pompey Ompy Pearson, do they?" Then Cyril, embarrassed, hesitates angrily. "Go on, tell me, do they?" So now George wants to clear it out. So he asked Cyril angrily if he knew this had been going on in the club, leaving Cyril embarrassed and unwilling. So Cyril is now embarrassed and he is unwilling to answer to the question of his father, George Pearson. Then Cyril is embarrassed and says, "Well, yes, Dad, I'm afraid they do." So George slowly looks from one to the other, staggered. So staggered means astonished or deeply shocked. So though uneasily, he told George that they indeed call him by this names, and he is famous in the club as Pompey Ompy Pearson. Then further George says very slowly, "Well, I'll be damned." George exits left slowly, almost as if somebody had hit him over the head. Cyril, after watching him go, turns indignantly to Mrs. Pearson. So now George curses himself slowly that if they call him names at the club, then he may go to hell. And he leaves the scene in shock and despair, as if he has been hit on the head. And Cyril sees him go and then turns to talk to Mrs. Pearson. So George is very much shocked to see her, to see that or to hear the fact that the people at the club, what they feel about him. So now Cyril says, "Now you shouldn't have told him that, Mom. That's not fair. You've hurt his feelings. Mine too." So now Cyril puts forward his point of view and says it was not nice of Mrs. Pearson to have done that to his father, and she not only hurts his feeling but also Cyril's. Now on this, Mrs. Pearson answers, sometimes it does people good to have their feelings hurt. The truth ought not to hurt anybody for long. If your father didn't go to club so often, perhaps they would stop laughing at him. So now Mrs. Pearson says that she then imparts some words of wisdom by telling him that truth only hurts for a short while, and it is fine to get one's feeling hurt at times. And then she further mentions that this would not have happened if his father didn't go to the club every other day. So now Cyril very gloomily says, I doubt it. So he doesn't believe in whatever Mrs. Pearson has to say at that moment. Then Mrs. Pearson says very severely, possibly you do. But what I doubt is whether your opinion's worth having. What do you know? Nothing. You spend too much time and good money on greyhound races and dirt tracks and ice shows. So in these lines the word severely means strictly. So now Mrs. Pearson makes it clear that she didn't invite Cyril's opinion on the matter, and she also mentions that he also doesn't have enough knowledge to talk about these things, because all he knows is spending time and money on greyhound races and ice shows. What are greyhounds? Are the dogs. So he just spends most of his money on the races and ice shows. Then further Cyril says very sulkily, well, what if I do? I've got to enjoy myself somehow, haven't I? So now sulkily here means showing a disagreeable mood. So now he mentions that he doesn't find any problem in doing so if it brings him joy. Then Mrs. Pearson says, I wouldn't mind so much if you were really enjoying yourself. But are you? And where's it getting you? Here is a sharp, hurried knocking her off left. Now Mrs. Pearson lets him know that she has no problem with him doing all those things if they are really bringing him joy. And she asks him if he is actually getting the enjoyment, and he claims to have achieved, and in addition it is taking him nowhere good. Suddenly someone knocks on the door at the same moment. Then Cyril says, might be for me, I'll see. And then Cyril hurries out left. In a moment he re-enters, closing the door behind him. It's that silly old bag from next door, Mrs. Fitzgerald. You don't want her here, do you? So now thinking that someone must have visited him, Cyril goes to check the door and comes back after a while, only to tell Mrs. Pearson that Mrs. Fitzgerald has come to see her, and that he doesn't regard her very respectfully, and asks Mrs. Pearson if she really wants to see her. Then on this Mrs. Pearson says very sharply, certainly I do, ask her in. I don't call her a silly old bag either. She's a very nice woman with a lot more sense than you'll ever have. Cyril exits left. Mrs. Pearson finishes her stout, smacking her lips. Now Cyril re-enters left, ushering in Mrs. Fitzgerald, who hesitates in the doorway. Come in, Mrs. Fitzgerald. So now ushering here means showing or guide someone somewhere. So now very clearly she replies that she indeed wants to see Mrs. Fitzgerald, and also tells Cyril to treat her with respect, as she is a delightful woman who talks more sense than him. While Cyril guides Mrs. Fitzgerald to Mrs. Pearson finishes her stout and greets her when she finally sees her. Then Mrs. Fitzgerald says, moving to the left center anxiously, I just wondered if everything's all right. So now hesitating, Mrs. Fitzgerald, who is actually Mrs. Pearson, enters and asks if all is going well. Then Cyril very sulkily says, no, it isn't. Cyril instantly disagrees and says that nothing is fine in their home. Then Mrs. Pearson very sharply says, of course it is. You be quiet. So now Mrs. Pearson, in an attempt to cover the situation, tells Mrs. Fitzgerald, who is actually Mrs. Pearson, that everything is all right, and instructs Cyril not to speak. Then Cyril very indignantly and loudly, "Why should I be quiet?" So now indignantly here means in a manner indicating anger or annoyance at something perceived as unfair. So now considering Mrs. Pearson is being unfair, he bursts out and asks her why shall he not speak. Then Mrs. Pearson shouting says, "Because I tell you, you silly spoiled young pecan." So here pecan means foolish person. So Mrs. Pearson shouts at Cyril and tells him to obey what she asked him to do. Then Mrs. Fitzgerald, protesting nervously, says, "Oh no, surely." Now Mrs. Fitzgerald tries to interrupt in between because she is actually Mrs. Pearson who is hurt when Mrs. Fitzgerald shouts at Cyril. So now Mrs. Pearson very severely says, "Now it's Mrs. Fitzgerald. Just let me manage my family in my own way, please." So now Mrs. Pearson instantly replies and tells Mrs. Fitzgerald to stay out of her personal and family matter. And on this, Mrs. Fitzgerald says, "Yes, but Cyril." She tries to mention Cyril and is again interrupted by this time by Cyril. Now Cyril very sulkily and glowering says, "Mr. Cyril Pearson to you, please." Mrs. Fitzgerald. Now Cyril stalks off into the kitchen. So glowering means having an angry look on one's face. Now Mrs. Fitzgerald moving to the settee whispering, "Oh dear, what's happening?" So now Mrs. Fitzgerald, who is actually Mrs. Pearson, gets worried and moves to the settee to sit, and she then expresses her worries. Mrs. Pearson very calmly says, "Nothing much, just putting them in their places, that's all. Doing what you ought to have done long since." So now Mrs. Pearson replies that what she has been doing was long due, which actually she should have done earlier, and now she is just getting them to behave nicely with their mother and wife. So now Mrs. Fitzgerald says, "Is George home?" She sits beside Mrs. Pearson on the settee. So now moving closer to Mrs. Pearson, Mrs. Fitzgerald asks her if George is home. Then Mrs. Pearson says, "Yes, I've been telling him what they think of him at the club." So now Mrs. Pearson replies, "Yes," and tells her how she told him that what the people said about him at the club. Then Mrs. Fitzgerald says, "Well, they think a lot of him, don't they?" So Mrs. Fitzgerald, unknowing of the truth and being naturally innocent as she is, thinks they thought highly of him. So on this, Mrs. Pearson says, who is actually Mrs. Fitzgerald, says, "No, they don't, and now he knows it." So Mrs. Pearson replies that Mrs. Fitzgerald thinks wrong and now George also knows the truth. Then Mrs. Fitzgerald very nervously says, "Oh dear, I wish you hadn't, Mrs. Fitzgerald." So now Mrs. Fitzgerald being a nice person, she did not want George's feeling hurt and adds that she wished Mrs. Pearson had not done this. Then Mrs. Pearson says, "Nonsense, doing them all a world of good, and they'll be eating out of your hand soon, and you'll see." Eating out of your hand, this phrase means be submissive. So now in these lines, Mrs. Pearson tells her that she has done her good and that its consequences would soon be visible and everyone will start respecting and obeying her. So on this, Mrs. Fitzgerald says, "I don't think I want them eating out of my hand." So now Mrs. Fitzgerald tells Mrs. Pearson that she does not want to be manipulative or dominating and to be submissive to them. So now Mrs. Pearson says, very impatiently says, "Well, whatever you want, they'll be doing it. All three of them, mark my words, Mrs. Pearson." So a bit annoyed, she answers that this is happening regardless of whether she wants it to happen or not. So then George enters left glumly. He is unpleasantly surprised when he sees the visitor. He moves to the armchair left, sits down heavily and glumly lights his pipe. Then he looks from Mrs. Pearson to Mrs. Fitzgerald, who is regarding him anxiously. So now George enters the room with a sad face. He is not happy to see Mrs. Fitzgerald. He sits on the armchair, sits on it, and lights his pipe to smoke. He looks at the two women. Mrs. Fitzgerald is looking at him curiously. So now George says, "Just looked in for a minute, I suppose, Mrs. Fitzgerald." So now glumly here, moody or unsociable attitude. So here George enters the scene in not very pleasant mood. He is also a bit shocked at the sight of Mrs. Fitzgerald in his house. While lighting his pipe, he noticed Mrs. Fitzgerald, who is awkwardly regarding him, and he is a bit confused. He asks if she is Mrs. Fitzgerald. Then Mrs. Fitzgerald says, "Who doesn't know what she is saying?" Well, yes, I suppose so, George. So now Mrs. Fitzgerald, not very sure of what she should say, replies very awkwardly while greeting him by his name. Then George is aghast, says George. So he gets shocked at hearing Mrs. Fitzgerald calling him by his name. So Mrs. Fitzgerald now nervously says, "Oh, I'm sorry." So she gets nervous and apologizes for addressing him by his name. Then Mrs. Pearson says very impatiently, "What does it matter? Your name is George, isn't it? Who would you think you are, Duke of Edinburgh?" So here Mrs. Pearson now instantly interferes and tells George that it's no big deal even if she called him by his name, and he's not some Duke of Edinburgh who is not supposed to be called by his name, and someone who deserves that honor. Then George very angrily says, "What's he got to do with it? Just tell me that. And isn't it bad enough without her calling me George? No tea, Pompey Pearson, and poor Doris has been crying her eyes out upstairs. Yes, crying her eyes out." So now George loses her temper and points out that bringing the Duke of Edinburgh in between this conversation makes no sense. And he further adds that Mrs. Fitzgerald calling him by his name doesn't matter because the already prevailing situation is much worse, and there is no tea ready, and he is being called names at the club. And not to forget poor Doris, who is crying endlessly. Then further, Mrs. Fitzgerald says, wailing, "Oh dear, I ought to have known." So Mrs. Fitzgerald, who is actually Mrs. Pearson, immediately interrupts and shows concern for Mrs. Pearson's family. On seeing her family at unease, the real Mrs. Pearson forgot that she is in the body of Mrs. Fitzgerald, and hence she speaks up. Then George, he is staring at her annoyed. "You ought to have known. Why ought you have known? Nothing to do with you, Mrs. Fitzgerald. Look, we are at 6s and 7s here just now, so perhaps you will excuse us." So at 6s and 7s, this phrase means in a state of total confusion and disarray. So here in these lines, now George is annoyed at Mrs. Fitzgerald for being so concerned and acting as if it's her own family matter, and he feels she is interfering in his family matters. He tells her to let them solve their issues on their own by leaving their house. So now Mrs. Pearson says, before Mrs. Fitzgerald can reply, says, "I won't excuse you, George Pearson. Next time a friend and neighbor comes to see me, just say something when you see her. Good evening, or how do you do, or something, and don't just march in and sit down without a word. It's bad manners." So now Mrs. Pearson immediately interferes and scolds George for being so rude and disrespectful, and she tells him to be a bit polite next time if an acquaintance of her visits her, instead of just barging in the room and sitting without greeting them. and she calls it bad manners. Then Mrs. Fitzgerald very nervously says, "No, it's all right." So now Mrs. Fitzgerald, who is actually Mrs. Pearson, is all awkward in this situation and tells Mrs. Pearson that she has no problem with George's behavior. Then Mrs. Pearson says, "No, it isn't all right. We will have some decent manners in this house, or I'll know the reason why," glaring at George well. So now Mrs. Pearson declares that this is not how things are going to work in her house, and her family will act, and they will have to act in disciplined and respectful manner. So then George, very intimidated with it, "Well, what?" So George is scared and acts as if he did not understand, and he asks her to repeat what she said. Then Mrs. Pearson, taunting him, says, "Why don't you get off to your club? Special night tonight, isn't it? They'll be waiting for you, wanting to have a good laugh. Go on then, don't disappoint them." So now Mrs. Pearson replies in a very taunting way and asks George Pearson to go to the club for that special night, and she tells him that she should now and tells him that they all might be waiting for him to have a good laugh at him, and he must not disappoint those people in the club. Then George bitterly says, "That's right, make me look silly in front of her now. Go on, don't mind me." Sixes and sevens. Poor Doris been crying her eyes out, getting the neighbors in to see the fun. Suddenly losing his temper, glaring at Mrs. Pearson and shouting, "All right, let her hear it. What's the matter with you? Have you gone balmy or what?" So here balmy means mad or crazy. So now George tells Mrs. Pearson that that's right, and he asks her to proceed and not mind his presence while laughing at him in front of the neighbors. So in the process, he loses his cool and starts shouting about Doris crying, and then he asks her what was wrong with her, if she had gone crazy. So now Mrs. Pearson, jumping up savagely, says, "If you shout at me again like that, George Pearson, I'll slap your big fat silly face." So now Mrs. Pearson springs up and reacts immediately. She warns him that if he ever uses this tone and such voice with her, she will slap his big fat face. Now Mrs. Fitzgerald moaning, "Oh no, 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 please Mrs. Fitzgerald." Mrs. Pearson sits. Now Mrs. Fitzgerald tries to calm down Mrs. Pearson, who is actually Mrs. Fitzgerald, and in the process she accidentally calls her Mrs. Fitzgerald, and Mrs. Pearson finally sits. Then George, staring at her bewildered, "Either I am off my chump or you two are." "How would you mean?" "No, no, please Mrs. Fitzgerald. Look, you are Mrs. Fitzgerald. So why are you telling yourself to stop when you are not doing anything? Tell her to stop, and then there would be some sense in it." Staring at Mrs. Pearson, "I think you must be tiddly." So here tiddly means slightly drunk. So here George is startled by this and says that is it him who is not in his senses or Mrs. Fitzgerald and Mrs. Pearson, because these two have been acting very weirdly, and he doesn't understand why she called her Mrs. Fitzgerald, that is by her own name. Then mistakes like that aren't very usual, and he finds it odd that she is telling herself to stop doing something she is not doing in the first place, and he is of the opinion that it would make more sense if she would stop Mrs. Pearson speaking nonsense. Then now Mrs. Pearson, staring up savagely, says, Say that again, George Pearson." So now Mrs. Pearson gets heated up again and challenges George to repeat his words. Then George, intimidated, says, all right. George is intimidated and accepts now. Then Doris enters left slowly. Looking miserable, she is still wearing the wrap, and Mrs. Pearson sits on the settee. So now Doris enters slowly from the left side, She looks very sad. She is wearing a wrap. Mrs. Pearson is sitting on the settee. Now Mrs. Fitzgerald says, "Hello, Doris dear." As Doris enters with a pale face, looking worse than before, then Mrs. Fitzgerald greets her politely. Then Doris very miserably says, "Hello, Mrs. Fitzgerald." So now, though in a very terrible state of mind, she greets her back. Then Mrs. Fitzgerald says, "I thought you were going out with Charlie Spence tonight." Now Mrs. Fitzgerald, again forgetting who she actually is now, she asked Doris about her plan with Charlie Spence. Then Doris, annoyed, says, "What's that to do with you?" So now Doris, who is already annoyed, replies in an irritated tone and asks Mrs. Fitzgerald that why she is so bothered about her pains. Then Mrs. Pearson very sharply says, "Stop that." So now Mrs. Pearson, in a bid to continue what she has been doing all day, interrupts and stops Doris from behaving that way. Then Mrs. Fitzgerald very nervously says, "No, it's all right." So now Mrs. Fitzgerald again tells her, or Mrs. Pearson, who is actually Mrs. Fitzgerald, that Doris' behavior is fine. Then Mrs. Pearson very severely says, "It isn't all right. I won't have a daughter of mine talking to anybody like that. Now answer Mrs. Fitzgerald properly, Doris, or go upstairs again." And Doris looks wonderingly at her father. So now Mrs. Pearson tells Mrs. Fitzgerald that Doris' behavior is something she is not going to tolerate in her house, and instructs her to reply to Mrs. Fitzgerald properly. And Doris is shocked at her response and looks at her father astonished. Then George, in despair, he is very sad now. "Don't look at me. I give it up. I just give it up." So now George, having lost all hope about Mrs. Pearson, tells Doris that even he cannot make the situation better, and he has given up handling it and feels it has run out of his control. Then Mrs. Pearson very fiercely says, "Well, answer her." So Mrs. Pearson, stern on her stand, orders Doris to answer Mrs. Fitzgerald properly. Then Doris very sulkily says, "I was going out with Charlie Spence tonight, but now I've called it off." So now Doris gives in and replies to Mrs. Fitzgerald and tells her that she had cancelled the plans she had for the night with Charlie Spence. Then Mrs. Fitzgerald says, "Oh, what a pity, dear. Why have you?" So now Mrs. Fitzgerald gets concerned and asks her the reason for cancelling it. Then Doris, with a flash of temper, says, "Because if you must know, my mother's been going on at me, making me feel miserable, and saying he's got buck teeth and is half-witted." So now Doris, getting angry again, begins telling Mrs. Fitzgerald how her mother, Mrs. Pearson, had been behaving all day. And she also says that Mrs. Pearson had been finding ways to make her feel bad about Charlie, commenting about his appearance and intelligence. Then Mrs. Fitzgerald says rather bolder to Mrs. Pearson, "Oh, you shouldn't have said that." Then Mrs. Fitzgerald, rather bolder to Mrs. Pearson, says, "Oh, you shouldn't have said that." So now Mrs. Fitzgerald now turns a bit bold when she decides to take a stand against Mrs. Pearson. So Mrs. Pearson very sharply says, "Mrs. Fitzgerald, I'll manage my family, you manage yours." So now Mrs. Pearson very bluntly tells Mrs. Fitzgerald to stay out of her family matters and manage her own. Then George very grimly, now he's confused, ticking her off now. "Are you Annie?" So George barges in and asks Mrs. Pearson if she is going to behave in this way with Mrs. Fitzgerald as well. So now Mrs. Pearson even more grimly says, "They are waiting for you at the club, George. Don't forget. And don't you start crying again, Doris." Now Mrs. Pearson immediately replies to George and tells him that his friends must be waiting for him at the club, and she warns Doris not to cry again. So this is actually Mrs. Fitzgerald. So now Mrs. Fitzgerald getting up with sudden decision says, "That's enough, quite enough." George and Doris stare at her bewildered. So to George and Doris, "Now listen, You two, I want to have a private talk with Mrs. Fitz. She corrects herself hastily. With Mrs. Pearson. So I'll be obliged if you leave us alone for a few minutes. I'll let you know what when we have finished. Go on, please. I promise you that you won't regret it. And there's something here that only I can deal with. So now Mrs. Fitzgerald finally decides to take a stand and tells George and Doris to leave both of them alone so that they can talk in private, and in the process she was again about to call her wrongly, but somehow handles the situation, and she gives them assurance that she is the only one who can handle the situation, so it would be of their benefit only if they would give both of them some time alone. Now George, rising, says, I'm glad someday somebody can, cause I can't. Come on, Doris. George and Doris exit left. As they go, Mrs. Fitzgerald moves to left of the small table and sits. She eagerly beckons Mrs. Pearson to do the same thing. Beckon here means making a gesture with the hand, arm or head to encourage or instruct someone to approach or follow. So now George comments that he is relieved to hear that at least someone can handle the situation because he knows he can't. And both of them leave the scene, and the actual Mrs. Pearson moves towards the table, expecting Mrs. Fitzgerald to do the same. Then Mrs. Fitzgerald says, Mrs. Fitzgerald, we must change back now. We really must. So she tells Mrs. Pearson that is the time that they should switch their places back. And Mrs. Pearson are rising. Why? Mrs. Pearson asks her why they should switch their places back. Then Mrs. Fitzgerald answers, because this has gone far enough. I can see they are all miserable and I can't bear it. So now she tells Mrs. Pearson that things have gone way beyond her imagination, and she knows that her family is in trouble and she can't stand that fact. Thus, she wants them to change back to their original selves. Then Mrs. Pearson, a bit more of the same would do them good, making a great difference already. She moves to right of the table and sits. So in these lines, now as she moves and sits on her side of the table, she tells Mrs. Fitzgerald that it would be better for them to have the taste of this medicine for a bit longer. Then she tells her that a lot of progress has been made already. Mrs. Fitzgerald tells Mrs. Pearson that she has already brought a change. There's a lot of progress that has been made already, but she wants little more time or more effort to bring the wonders or to put them in a right position. So now Mrs. Fitzgerald says, no, I can't stand any more of it. I really can't. We must change back. Hurry up, please, Mrs. Fitzgerald. So now she stays on her opinion and wants to switch back. So Mrs. Pearson, she again wants to come back into her own body, and she tells Mrs. Fitzgerald to do it a bit fast. Then Mrs. Pearson says, well, if you insist. So Mrs. Pearson, who is actually Mrs. Fitzgerald, says, if you insist, if you force, then okay. Then Mrs. Fitzgerald says, yes, I do, please, please. She stretches her hands across the table eagerly. Mrs. Pearson takes them. So now Mrs. Fitzgerald, who is actually Mrs. Pearson, is very eager to undo the trick, and she then stretches her arm in order to hold hands with Mrs. Pearson. And then Mrs. Pearson also stretches her hands forward. Then Mrs. Pearson, quite now relaxed, Mrs. Pearson and Mrs. Fitzgerald stare at each other, muttering exactly as before, Ashtadam, Ashtadam, Ashtata, Lambuda, Lamdam, Bona. They carry out the same action as before, going lax and then coming back to life. But this time, of course, they become their proper personalities. So now Mrs. Pearson asks Mrs. Fitzgerald to stay quiet for a while till she performs the magic trick. And they undergo the same process, and the real Mrs. Fitzgerald whispers the same words, that is the same magic spell. And the transition is now finally complete and successful, just like before. But the only difference now is that they are back to their real bodies. Now both of them are in their own bodies. So now Mrs. Fitzgerald says, well, I enjoyed that. So Mrs. Fitzgerald, who got to play the role of Mrs. Pearson, expresses that she had fun during the process. And Mrs. Pearson says, I didn't. So Mrs. Pearson, who had to go through the feeling of seeing her family being terrible, obviously didn't have fun at all. Then Mrs. Fitzgerald says, well, you ought to have done now. Listen, Mrs. Pearson, don't go soft on them again, else it will all have been wasted. So now Mrs. Fitzgerald warns Mrs. Pearson not to go easy on them again, and otherwise all the efforts would go waste. Then Mrs. Pearson says, I'll try not to, Mrs. Fitzgerald. She replies that she will try her best. Then Mrs. Fitzgerald says, they've not had as long as I would like them given them. Another hour or two rough treatment might have made it certain. So now she says that the time available to her was not satisfactory, as an hour and two of the same treatment would leave a lasting impression on them. So now Mrs. Pearson says, I'm sure they'll do better now, though I don't know how I am going to explain. So Mrs. Pearson let her know that she is certain of some change. All she is unsure about is how she will clarify the things. Then Mrs. Fitzgerald very severely says, don't you start any explaining or apologizing, or you are done for. So she wants her not to go on apologizing for the treatment, as it would reverse the effect of all the hard work that Mrs. Fitzgerald had done. So now Mrs. Pearson, with spirit, it's all right for you, Mrs. Fitzgerald. After all, they aren't your husband and children. So now Mrs. Pearson speaks up and says that it is easy for Mrs. Fitzgerald to say all those things because this isn't her family. Then Mrs. Fitzgerald very impressively says, now you listen to me. You admitted yourself you were spoiling them and they didn't appreciate you. Any apologizes, any explanations, and you'll be straight back where you were. I'm warning you, dear. Just give them a look, a tone of voice now and again to suggest you might be tough with them if you want it to be, and it ought to work anyhow. We can test it. So now Mrs. Fitzgerald makes her aware that it was Mrs. Pearson who accepted that they are spoiled brats who didn't appreciate her. And Mrs. Pearson even said that she wanted things to improve. So Mrs. Fitzgerald again emphasizes that any apology would bring them back to being rude to her. And she goes to the extent of saying that being dominating once in a while would keep them on track. And she says that Mrs. Pearson can even test this if she wants. Then Mrs. Pearson says, how? Mrs. Pearson asks Mrs. Fitzgerald how they can test whatever she is saying. Then Mrs. Fitzgerald says, well, what is it you would like them to do that they don't do? Stop at home for once. So now Mrs. Fitzgerald asks her to name one thing they are reluctant to do, but Mrs. Pearson wants them to, for example, staying at home once in a while. Then Mrs. Pearson says, yes, and give me a hand with supper. She adds that she also wants them to give her a hand in preparing the evening meal, to help her in preparing the evening meal. So now Mrs. Fitzgerald says, anything you would like them to do that you enjoy, whether they do or not. So now she further asks if there is anything she likes to do irrespective of whether they like doing it or not. Then Mrs. Pearson hesitating, well, yes, I like a nice game of rummy, but of course I hardly ever have one except at Christmas. So rummy is what? It is a card game. So now Mrs. Pearson hesitates at first, but then tells Mrs. Fitzgerald that she likes to play rummy, but she only gets to play it at Christmas. Then Mrs. Fitzgerald getting up, that's all, do then. She moves towards the door, left then, turns, but remember, keep firm or you have had it. She opens the door, calling, Hoy, you can come in now, coming away from the door and moving right slightly quietly. But remember, a firm hand. George, Doris and Cyril file in through the doorway, looking apprehensively at Mrs. Pearson. I'm just off to let you enjoy yourself. The family looks anxiously at Mrs. Pearson, who smiles. Much relieved, they smile back at her. So while moving towards the door now, she once again, Mrs. Fitzgerald once again emphasizes how important it is for Mrs. Pearson to be a little strict. Then Mrs. Pearson calls George, Cyril, and Doris inside, after which she leaves, and then Mrs. Pearson smiles at her family, somehow relieved. They all smile back now. Then Doris very anxiously says, "Yes, mother." Doris speaks up first, a bit nervous. Then Mrs. Pearson, smiling, says, "Seeing that you don't want to go out, I tell you what I thought we would do." So, still smiling, she says she knows exactly what they should do since they all are not going out. So, now Mrs. Fitzgerald, giving a final warning, says, "Remember." So, while leaving, Mrs. Fitzgerald once again reminds Mrs. Pearson to be strict with her family. Then Mrs. Pearson nodding, then looking sharply at the family. "No objections, I hope." Then Mrs. Pearson nods in an attempt to show that she remembers whatever Mrs. Fitzgerald has told her. She then asks her family if they have any objections. Then George very humbly says, "No, mother, whatever you say." So he says in a very polite tone that they do not have any objection and are ready to do whatever she says. Then Mrs. Pearson smiling, "I thought we would have a nice family game of rummy and then you children could get the supper ready while I have a talk with your father." So she very politely tells them that she wishes to play rummy with them, and after that she would like the children to help cook supper so that she can talk to George. Then George very firmly says, "Suits me." And he looks challengingly at the children. "What about you two?" So George agrees, but while looking at his children in a testing way, and asks about their opinion. So now Cyril says very hastily, "Yes, that's all right." Hastily here means very excessive speed or urgency or speedily. So Cyril instantly agrees that. Then Doris hesitating. So Doris hesitates a bit because she does not want to go and help or to prepare the supper that night. So Mrs. Pearson very sharply says, "What? Speak up." So now Mrs. Pearson speaks boldly and asks Doris. Doris hastily says, "Oh, I think it would be lovely." So now Doris also agrees instantly. Then Mrs. Pearson smiling says, "Goodbye, Mrs. Fitzgerald. Come again soon." Now Mrs. Pearson smiles at Mrs. Fitzgerald, wishing her goodbye. Then Mrs. Fitzgerald says, "Yes, dear, night all. Have a nice time." So now Mrs. Fitzgerald exits left and the family cluster around mother as the curtain falls. So as Mrs. Fitzgerald exits, the family moves to gather round the woman of the house and the curtain falls. So this is the end of the play. I hope you all have understood it. Thank you and goodbye.